Good morning, Title I Committee of Practitioners. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Tara Rodriguez. I'm the Director of the Division of School and Program Improvement here at the Kentucky Department of Education. So glad you're with us. As you know, we had a little bit of technical difficulty this morning, but I think we're good now. And thank you so much for your patience and for hanging in there and joining the meeting. Really appreciate that because we've got a nice agenda for you this morning, and looking forward to having some conversation and hearing your feedback and your input on these various topics. So we'll go ahead and get started with our first, well, of course, the meeting is called to order, and I'll go down the roll here. If you don't care to let me know if you are with us this morning. Kelly Abney. Jan Anger.
I am here.
All right. Mary Beth Bowling.
Here.
Christina Dalton.
I'm here.
Ricky Hanger.
Here.
Stephanie Harris.
Here.
Diane Hatfield. Holly Kimball. David Melanti.
I am here.
Stacy Talley. Robert Tanner.
I'm here.
And Daryl Vincent. All right. Well, welcome again, and very glad to have you with us. So we'll go down through the agenda real quick just to kind of give an overview of what we have on our list to discuss today. First, Marcia Van Hook from she is the Full Service Community Schools Manager in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support here at KDE, and she will be discussing community schools with us here first on the agenda. And then Matthew Courtney, he's our policy advisor in the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, and he will be discussing the paraeducator regulation with you. Aaron Settis, who is the Education Administration Program Manager in the Division of School and Program Improvement, will be here to discuss paraeducator exam updates. And then she will also talk with us about the Title I Monitoring Documentation Storage Tool implementation. And then last but not least on our agenda, Kristen Montgomery. She is our Education Administration Program Consultant in the Division of School and Program Improvement, and she will be discussing Title I Part C Service Delivery Plan Update. And then last, we will have some conversation about any future agenda topics and some possible upcoming meeting dates for next year. And then that will be our agenda for today. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll begin with Marcia Van Hook. Marcia, if you would like to say a few, say a few words to introduce yourself and the work you do, and I'll be pulling up the slides.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here today and share with you the work of community schools. I want to talk just for a few minutes to let you know about my role at KDE. My role, and that's fine, Tara, you can go ahead. My role at KDE, I often refer to myself as a dot connector. So let me explain what that means while I explain the purpose. So our purpose for my time with you today is just to provide you an overview of what a community school is, what full service community schools are, learn about the Kentucky Community School Initiative. We lovingly call that just KCSI, and create an awareness of how community schools connect to Title I and family engagement. So my role at KDE, as I started to say, is I work very, very closely with the Pritchard Committee as the liaison for all things KDE in a grant, and I'll speak to that in just a few minutes in another slide. So my role there is just to make sure we are aligning pieces of KDE requirements and the resources and tools that we have at KDE to this work. Also is to connect back to share all of the tools and resources that we have across the board with all the members involved in that initiative. And so with that, there's just a lot of conversation. And so organically, the word is getting out in KDE, and I share to lots of groups and communities and learn about new tools and resources that we can implement in this work. So hopefully we're all set. Okay, Tara. Let me start out with a common definition of what a community school is. And so this is a big wordy definition, but I do want to walk you through it. The Learning Policy Institute defines community schools as it's an evidence-based strategy to advance equity and reduce barriers to learning by providing services needed to support student and family well-being. So right off the bat, we see the connection to families and students in the definition of a community school. It's not geared to just students. Through trusting relationships and well-coordinated supports, and I always think about the Title I family engagement pieces, like how do we create those trusting relationships to create well-coordinated supports? Community schools ensure that students receive the health, the social service, and the learning opportunities they need to be successful. So it's not just about academics. Tara, we can go on. So it's really important to know what a community school is not. Community schools are not programs. They are not one and done events. We've all seen, oh, it's time to do that Title I family night, so let's do a dinner and we've held our meeting, check, we're done. It is not a one and done event. And most importantly, community schools are not identical to each other. When you think about a community, they are unique entities. So when you see one community school, you have only seen one community school. Hey, Tara. So let's talk about talk about the Kentucky Community School Initiative, which I did allude to in my work with the Pritchard Committee. So the U.S. Department of Education awarded a huge grant to the Pritchard Committee with KDE. This is the important connection with KDE and the Family and Youth Resource Service Centers, which we call FRISC, as critical partners. So we have this partnership with all things that connect to this work. In that grant, there are 5 state coaches. So Title I consultants, you may see a state coach and they will be from the Pritchard Committee. Each state coach is there to advise and help build through the family involvement and the community pieces and their action plans, which they call school action plans, and linking that back to continuous improvement efforts. So each of those coaches have a portfolio of the 20 districts that's divided up among those coaches. So there are 20 districts that applied and were selected to be a part of this initiative. There are 20 district directors that were hired as part of this initiative within those districts, and there are 40 schools. So just simple math, you can see that each district has 2 schools, and the district director is helping to oversee all of that work. If you're interested in seeing a roster of where and who those districts and schools are, you can follow the link. We have a full service community schools webpage with lots of updates and information. So you can see all of those schools and districts there. There's also contact information there as well. Tara? So let's talk about what the 4 pillars of a community school are. And so the first one, we see active family and community engagement. And note the word active. They are truly participants in that work of that school and community. The second pillar is expanded and enriched learning times. So not just what happens in that classroom setting with the standards, but how do we expand that so that students can be the best that they can be? How do we enrich those learning times so they truly help that student be a successful human being leaving school? And then integrated supports. Think about all the supports that are out in the community that can come to bear to help a student and a family be better off in the end. And then collaborative leadership and practices to support high quality teaching. And so we're going to look at these in a little bit more depth, but collaborative leadership also comes into family leadership. And I'll share an example in just a few minutes. Go ahead, Tara. There are 8 pipeline services that are actually embedded under those 4 pillars. So again, I just would like you to look at the totality of the support of these pipeline services and look at the community and family mentions that are here. So first pipeline is just encouraging that family and community involvement. With this initiative, They hold a series of community meetings in each district. And so with that community, you have families, you have community members, and that gets us into that second pipeline, which is community-based support. How can they support the needs of a school? There's high quality early education programs. So note here, we're already starting at the very beginning. How do we make sure that there are early education programs that help those students entering kindergarten be the best prepared? There's also high quality education programs both inside and outside of the classroom. So it goes beyond those four walls. The pipeline also, the next one, helps students smoothly transition between those different school levels. So you think about when a child enters kindergarten, when a child leaves elementary school and transitions to middle school, and when a child a young adult, I should say at that point, transitions to high school, and then beyond, because the next pipeline speaks about supporting that post-secondary and workforce readiness. Then we get into social health, nutrition, and mental health services. Are all of those things being offered, and they're simply embedded in a pipeline service? And then lastly, juvenile crime prevention and rehabilitation programs. That may not be a huge area in some locales, but it also may be a huge piece in others that is presenting itself as a barrier for all students. So just to share those 8 pipelines. So what does it actually look like in action? We use this graphic a lot in presentations because it illustrates what each of these 4 pillars, and we speak about the 4 pillars often, what each of these might look like. So if you look at the integrated support pillar, you actually see a representation of it looks like a doctor seeing a student, could be a dentist, but a medical need. There's also that one-on-one, it looks like a counseling. And then how are we helping students there? You see different adults in a variety of ways at the top of that pillar. The next pillar is expanded and enriched learning times. And I love the representation of a garden. So like just enriching a student's experience into action. And with the support of families, how could we do something together? We also see at the bottom, we see some one-on-one tutoring there for a student. Active family and community engagement, you see everyone at the top of that pillar like engaging, and you also see how that's brought into the classroom with the students there. And then collaborative leadership, please note the school is in the middle of this illustration, and all of the partners are around that school. And so we often say we want those community schools to be the hub of that community. So I'm going to take each pillar, I'm going to walk you through a little bit, and I'm also going to give you some actual examples that have come from our 40 schools that they're starting to implement or have already put into place. So first of all, we'll speak to that active family and community engagement, and it really is designed to have schools and the community become more intentional with family involvement. Not just that one and done event like I spoke to earlier, but how do we really engage them and have that family be very critical in making decisions about their child's education? So you can see that in the next bullet. Everyone is working together, collaborating together to make decisions in the best interest of the children in that community. And as I mentioned earlier, those schools function or are being designed or transforming themselves to function as neighborhood hubs for that community. So let's give you a couple examples. A school may host a series of mental health seminars, and those may be offered at various times so that parents and other students that may be working after school, if they're a high school student, can attend. There's also an example of a fatherhood program group that meets regularly with members being actively involved in some areas of the school. Maybe it's, something in the landscaping of the school. Maybe it's in tutoring. Maybe it's in reading. Maybe it's anything where they are actively engaged in some facet of that school, and there's a male role there. So go ahead, Tara. When we look at the next pillar, integrated student supports, it takes a whole child approach. So if you think back to that first slide where we walked through all the way from early childhood, transitioning through the school levels, actually into post-secondary and the workforce, it really is looking at that whole child and the family needs and the social and emotional needs. It also provides a range of on-site services and supports so that they can overcome any academic barrier, but also a non-academic barrier to student success. And one of the things that we often learn in those community meetings are barriers that quite possibly the admin and teachers just aren't aware of or do not understand or have an understanding of the significance of that barrier, and then work together to solve that need. So those supports are tailored to meet local needs. I'll give you another quick example. I have some things at the bottom. I was at a community meeting and transportation to some after school events was an issue. And there was someone there from the hospital and they said, hey, we have a bus and it's available and you can have it to use. So had those groups not connected in some way, there was a need that was filled with a community member and that would never have come together. So I just wanted to share that. The other examples are medical, dental, and mental health care services, those tutorings I talked about, and resources from the for families. And so I want to talk to you about Build Her Crown initiative. This is an initiative that is going on in Owensboro. CROWN actually stands for confidence, respect, originality, well-roundedness, and neighborly. And so this school delved into their data with their community and found out that their middle school girls were having a huge behavior and social emotional issue that was resulting in a lot of referrals and behaviors. So together with the community, they came up with this Build Her Crown initiative. And Tara, if we can go to the next slide, I'd like to show you, it's short. It is a news story from the local news about the girls at Owensboro Middle School. And nope, and Tara tested it, so we should be good. It's a really exciting, and I hope it plays because it really speaks to the community. Tara, is it going to go?
It's playing for me. Is it not playing for you guys?
I think you may have shared your PowerPoint and not like whatever, internet browser window that the video is playing in, probably.
Okay.
Tara, you want me to talk while you're trying to solve that?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like, should I stop sharing and then share this?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we can't get it to work, Tara, we can always, share it in an email. The local news actually came to. Oh, you got it? I think I heard some talking. There we go.
Do you see it? Okay.
Yes. I'm not hearing it. Are you hearing it?
I'm hearing it.
It's another setting. It's complicated
Okay.
to share a video and audio. I forgot about that part. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, they have the link in there, so
sure.
Yeah.
So please it's only about 2 minutes long. If you'd like to really delve into that, take a few minutes and take a look at that, because it really does show the girls coming in, and it talks about the community member, how she became involved. And then the part that I think is powerful in that video is the middle school girls actually talk about the impact that program has made on them. And so that is resulting in lower behavior referrals at the school already, and this just started. So it's a really neat program. All right, on to expanded and enriched learning times and opportunities. So again, I kind of spoke to that hospital community member resource, after school, weekend, and summer programs for academic instruction and that individualized support. Sometimes there's barriers to that, and the community can help, families can help. enrichment opportunities for real world learning and community problem solving. There's a lot of parents that have a lot of skill and they want to become involved. They just don't know how. And so sometimes coming and being a part of the community conversations and the action planning for a community school pillar to be implemented, they can find a role and be very supportive. So for an example, this is a really popular one. You can find homework diners. If you search YouTube, they're spread out across the country, but it's a very popular piece of this pillar. So there's weekly homework diners with parent education topics. And so while the school is serving dinner and having a diner and families are dining together, which some families do not anymore, as we know, there are things and activities built in that support students in their learning. There's also parent education pieces so that parents can learn about how not only how to better support their students, but I have seen examples of they would bring in someone from the banking and finance, just helping families maybe with keeping a checkbook or managing a budget, or helping them, how do I fulfill this need in our family so that the well-being of the family is better off. And another example is the after-school one-on-one tutoring. So we're going to get to the last pillar, which is collaborative leadership and practices. And notice this is the collaborative pillar of all. So it speaks to, right off the bat, parents, students, teachers, principals, community members, build that culture of professional learning together with a collective trust and a shared responsibility. So I spoke to a community meeting a couple of times, but also that family leadership teams. Is there a leadership team for that school or district that includes family members? So one of the most obvious ones is if a school is working on family-friendly certification, is there a school team that is inclusive of parents in that school team to receive that, working towards that certification? But then also the most obvious that a lot of schools do already have in place is teacher professional development and then teacher learning communities. Are we building that capacity to have collaborative leadership together? Okay, Tara. So the collaborative leadership pillar, it is the how you connect and implement the other three pillars. How are you creating collaborative entities within all groups of the school and the community? But it's also, how do you build the capacity to have collaboration among all those groups? So it really is the key piece. So let's talk about some Title I connections. The majority, thank you, Tara, we're ready. The majority of the 40 schools in the KCSI initiative are Title I eligible schools. And the implementation of those pillars, as I've been talking about, it does provide for more intentional and meaningful family engagement opportunities. And I see a little spelling error there that the spell check did not catch. It should be meaningful, not meaning. So just the implementation of those incorporates the family and the family voice into creating opportunities for students. And that collaborative leadership pillar, as I spoke to in the previous slide, it really does help build that parent voice in the decision-making process on how they're going to be successful, not only academically, but also being successful in life. So the question that I get a lot, we can go to the next one. The question I get a lot is how do we expand? Is it limited to only those 40 schools? So while Tara's bringing that up, next slide, is you connect, the 40 schools are set within the grant. However, the work, it can be spread across. This huge grant was for state scaling across our state, and there's an opportunity always to connect with a neighboring district directly involved in KCSI for ideas and further collaboration. I know within these 40 schools, we have a principal learning exchange. We have guest speakers that come from other states. And so we have superintendents and principals on those calls that are sharing. And so there's already a network established across the country with folks in schools that are much further down this road. So it's a great opportunity if you have a neighboring county to you that is involved, just to reach out and see what's going on there. KDE, here at KDE, we are working on an electronic process for sharing success stories and best practices so that we don't have to rely on a link and a PowerPoint, but we can actually post all of those things that are really yielding positive results for families and students. So we're at work on that. So stay tuned for that one. There's also the Full Service Community Schools webpage. We actually are updating that with a new flyer from Pritchard Committee that really details some of the work that is going on. And also, if you want to learn more about it, Pritchard Committee also hosts Groundswell Summit. That is June 10th through the 12th. It's at the Owensboro Convention Center. There will be KCSI Communities of Practice sessions. They do a huge poster session, think of science fair. They have a lot of fun with that, where the schools kind of showcase what's going on. So it's just an opportunity if you want to attend that meeting. You can always go to the Pritchard Committee and see that. We will be posting, as I said, lots of information as we evolve and grow with our own page here at KDE. And so lastly, we'll share some resources and some contacts. And we can go to the last slide, Tara. I'll just give you again that contact list. If you want to know more about it, that's the list with the district contacts and the state coaches. There is the roster of the districts and schools. We are in the process of updating that community school initiative link actually this morning, how Frisk plays a vital role here. There's my email contact. And lastly, I just wanted to leave you with something. Recently, the Innovation Guide came out. And as KDE has that resource available. And as you go in that Innovation Guide, in the introduction, I'd just like to leave you with one thing. It's number 3 in the introduction. It's creating a bold new future for Kentucky schools through collaboration with communities. So those families and communities are key players in the work of the student success. So if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And if not, Tara, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right. So thank you so much, Marcia. Really appreciate your expertise and your being here. Thank you. All right. Any questions that anybody would like to share, or any comments about our presentation on our community schools today? All right, then I am trying to make a quick switch here through the slides. And while I'm doing that, we'll move on to our paraeducator regulation with Matthew Courtney. Matthew, maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work, and then tell us about the paraeducator regulation.
Thanks, Tara. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Courtney. I'm the policy advisor to the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And my job involves supporting the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support with regulation and legislation and sort of those big picture policy goals and tasks. Today, I'm going to talk to you about our new paraeducator regulation that is making its way through the process right now. This was passed by the board at its April board meeting and is currently in public comment and is on track to be in effect for the start of the new school year. Before I get too far into it, I want to just say that this regulation doesn't change anything. So there's no big sweeping policy changes here. This is actually more of a compliance piece for us. KRS 161044 requires the Board of Education to have this regulation. And so in order to be in compliant with that statute, we have promulgated a regulation. And really what we've done here is we've taken existing policy statements, either borrowing from federal law or from other state laws, and just put them together in one spot. So not only will this make us compliant with the state statute, but we think that it will make it more a little more user-friendly and straightforward when it comes to what a paraeducator is and the rules and regulations around those. I'm just going to briefly cover what's in the regulation, and then I'll be happy to address any questions. Again, this is in public comment, so if you go to KDE's website and you go to our public comment page, you'll be able to see the full text of the regulation as well as directions on how to provide public comment to the department. So within the regulation, you will find a definition of a paraprofessional. And so this is the same definition that you have been familiar with that applies to Title I schools. We pulled that straight from the Federal Code of Regulations. You'll find minimum qualifications for paraprofessionals in non-Title I schools and in Title I schools. And again, those have not changed. So for our Title I schools, those minimum qualifications of 2 years of study at a higher institution of higher education or an associate's degree or a passing score on the state assessment stays the same. You'll also find some codified local education agency flexibilities. And so we know that LEAs and school districts need a little bit of flexibility on how they work with their paraeducators and paraprofessionals. And so you will still be able to add minimum qualifications for your district beyond those in the regulation, and you will be able to create your own job titles as long as they still meet the qualification. And then finally, you'll see some criteria for the statewide paraprofessional assessment, which you're going to learn more about from Aaron Sudduth in the next section, but we have gone ahead and codified that into the regulation as well, what those minimum criteria are for that regulation. And again, that's not anything new or any dramatic change. Those are the existing criteria that are in the existing assessment tools. So that's really it for this regulation. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, codifying those existing practices, which exist over multiple policy spaces, into one regulation in order to put KDE in compliance with state statute. So at that, I'll pause and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the regulation.
Matthew, you said this is in public comment currently. How long is that open for?
That's a great question. Let's see. June 30th. You have until June 30th to submit public comments, and all the directions for how to do that are on the KDE public hearing website. So the best way to get to that is to go to KDE's website and type public hearing into the search bar, and that'll take you right there.
All right, does anybody else have a question for Matthew or a comment? All right, thank you so much, Matthew. Appreciate your joining us this morning. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is paraeducator exam updates with Aaron Sudduth, and then she will also work with us on the Title I monitoring documentation storage tool implementation. Aaron?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Aaron Sudduth, and I'm the branch manager for the Title I Part A Support and Improvement branch. Right, so we can go to the next slide. And I've come and talked to you all before about paraeducator requirements, but I know we might have some new people, so I'm just going to quickly run through what those qualifications are. So these can be found in the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, or EDGAR, and that's 34 CFR 200.58. So for paraeducators who are working in a program supported with Title I Part A funds, more on that in a minute, they must have a secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent, and then they have to meet an additional educational requirement, and there's a couple of different ways that they can do that. The first one is complete at least 2 years of study at an institute of higher education, and that 2 years is going to depend on how that specific institution defines a year. For most, it's going to be 12 credit hours per semester, so they need a total of 48. there might be some out there who require 15 hours a semester or so for a total of 60 hours. Another way they can meet the requirement is to have obtained an associate's degree or higher. And then if they don't meet either of those, they can meet this rigorous standard of quality and demonstrate their ability to do these things through a local assessment. So they need to be able to demonstrate that they have knowledge of and the ability to assist in instructing reading, writing, math, and then reading readiness, writing readiness, and math readiness as appropriate. So let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned a minute ago, this applies to paraeducators working in programs supported with Title I Part A funds. So we have two different types of Title I Part A programs that a school can be operating. The first is a targeted assistance program. We don't have a lot of those, but we do have a handful. So in these programs, this is going to be an instructional paraeducator who is paid either fully or partially with Title I Part A funds. And then most of our Title I schools are what we call a school-wide program. And for those programs, this is all instructional paraeducators. It does not matter what funding source they're paid from. If they're an instructional paraeducator, they need to meet these requirements. There are a few people that this does not apply to. So these are the staff with non-instructional duties. So any clerical staff, custodial staff, your cafeteria workers, etc. Some people who are working as aides may just provide personal care services. This does not apply to them. We also might have individuals who work solely as an interpreter or a translator. They don't need to meet these requirements. And then finally, someone who is completing duties that are related solely to parent involvement activities. Next slide. Okay, the Kentucky Paraeducator Assessment, or KPA. The KPA is what we've been using in Kentucky to meet that third method of meeting the educational requirements. So the KPA was last revised in October of 2009. And the purpose is to just ensure that anybody who's applying to be a paraeducator who doesn't have those credit hours or the associate's degree or higher meets that additional qualifying educational requirement. It is a 60-question multiple choice test, and at least 48 of those 60 questions must be answered correctly in order to pass. And districts are able to provide study sessions and other supports to test takers at their discretion. So what we've been hearing about kind of over the years is some issues with the KPA. So first of all, we know that districts have been having some difficulty finding paraeducators who meet those qualification requirements through the college hours or the degree. Then there have been some applicants who they don't meet those requirements and they're really struggling to pass the KPA. Now districts do have the ability to give that person the KPA 3 times. And then after that, if you want to provide some more targeted support services, you can give the assessment to them again. We have received feedback from districts that the KPA needs to be updated. So what we did, we sent out something that I called the Kentucky Paraeducator Assessment Feedback Survey, and I sent that out to all district Title I coordinators back in February, just kind of regarding the very beginning steps of reviewing and possibly revising the KPA. And all the survey was 3 open response questions, just asking people to provide their top 3 ideas or suggestions that they'd like us to consider during the revision process. We did receive 20 responses to the survey, so if any of you on the call were responded to that, I really appreciate it. And we're taking all of that feedback into consideration as we're developing our next steps. So this slide contains a summary of the feedback that we received related to the KPA content and or the KPA test taking process in general. We heard that the math portion is too difficult. There's some outdated terminology on either the test or the study guide that goes with it. We heard about a need to ensure that it aligns to Kentucky's standards. We have paraeducators who are working largely with elementary school students, and there are some questions on there that are really more middle and high school level, and those individuals don't need to know that information. We also had a suggestion to consider incorporating questions about behavior and classroom management, cultural responsiveness. Several people said that they would prefer it be an online test. It's currently paper and pencil. We also had some feedback about revisiting the number of attempts to take the test, creating a database to house all of the test scores. Right now, the district and the individual who took the test, they're responsible for keeping track of that, and then just more user-friendly in general. I do want to point out that we did receive some feedback regarding what I'm going to call external factors, such as requests to eliminate this requirement altogether. So as a reminder, this is a federal requirement which cannot be eliminated or waived by KDE. We also had some feedback surrounding maybe including some questions related to communicating with parents or understanding the chain of command within the district or the school. And those are important things. They're probably not going to be the same across all schools and districts. So that's something that the district or the school could consider incorporating into something like a new employee onboarding process. So what we're looking for now is just a little bit more feedback from this committee, if you have any. So first of all, is anybody aware of additional supports that your district or some of your schools may provide to people who are interested in becoming paraeducators? I know I recently went on a monitoring visit, and one of the things that they had several paraeducators who needed to pass, and they did some really in-depth study sessions with them. Is anyone doing anything like that or anything else? All right, my next question is, do any districts out there provide any training to newly hired paraeducators? Maybe things having to do with chain of command, communicating with parents, or some of that behavioral classroom management stuff that was mentioned earlier.
Erin, I'll just speak to the Archdiocese of Louisville. We have about 15 Title I schools, a number of paraeducators, and so we have a third party that we partner with, which is Catapult, to provide those services. And they do meet monthly with the paraeducators for about 3 hours, and they actually meet in our building, and they provide some of those supports that you are talking about, the behavior management and or teaching strategy piece. So that's how our third party provider has addressed that.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Okay, and then just in general, is there any other feedback that you all would like KDE to consider during this revision process? And of course, if you don't think of something right now, feel free to email me and I'll make sure that we take it into consideration.
Something we do also to support our paraeducators is allowing them the opportunity for some professional learning time before school starts. So we make sure that they have 3 additional days at our school levels to make sure that they feel good and equipped to be able to be positioned to start with students once school starts. And then we have some built-in learning opportunities for them as well throughout the year, so that they have the right supports, just like we would do with our new teachers as well.
Great, that's awesome. All right, anybody else? All right, then I'm going to transition to our next agenda item, which is an update on the Title I program documentation storage tool and its implementation. So kind of some background information up first. Uniform grant guidance, and this is in 2 CFR 200.332. This requires pass-through entities like KDE to monitor the district's effectiveness in meeting all of the program requirements, including Title I Part A. So some of the ways that we do this, our staff conduct approximately 10 to 12 desk monitoring and 10 on-site monitoring visits each year. Desk monitoring is kind of an abbreviated monitoring. Districts submit evidence to us and we just review that and then follow up with any questions as needed. We don't actually go on site. And then as part of our consolidated monitoring process, that's where we again get that evidence uploaded and review all of that on our end. And then we go on site and we conduct interviews with different program staff, such as coordinators, finance officers, principals of Title I schools, etc. You can find lists of the suggested and sometimes required pieces of documentation on our Title I monitoring checklist. We have checklists for desk monitoring and then different ones for consolidated. We have a district checklist and then one for a school-wide program and one for a targeted assistance program. It's got all of the indicators about program requirements, and then for each one there's suggested documentation, and then sometimes, as I said, it's something that is specifically required. So as one of the largest federal programs that's supporting elementary and secondary education, Title I Part A has a lot of program requirements at both the district and school levels. There's no way around that. So demonstrating compliance for those requirements often requires a lot of documentation, such as meeting materials, reports, evidence of data analysis, etc. There's a lot to manage and keep up with, and without any sort of system or organizational structure in place, it's easy for things to be overlooked and maybe fall through the cracks. So whether districts submit this monitoring documentation via email, such as our desk monitoring process, or uploading to our secure SharePoint, which is what we do for our consolidated process, it takes a lot of time. Monitoring checklists and processes are reviewed annually as part of the continuous improvement process, and we're always looking for things that help streamline and simplify the entire monitoring and documentation process for our districts. So we can go to the next slide. Oops. Okay. What KDE has done recently is contracted with a group called Public Consulting Group, or PCG, and they are providing a platform called Title I Next. This is a documents management solution, and this is at no cost to all of our Kentucky school districts. This Title I Next is an online platform, and there's accounts for the district person and then for each principal at the Title I schools. They can store the files that they need to demonstrate program compliance. And PCG has been a part of several of our monthly Title I webinars to share information about the product with districts. I do want to point out that districts are not required to use this tool. This is completely optional. As of right now, we've had about, I believe, 97 districts opt in, and we've had accounts created for over 300 users at both the district and school level. So there's a lot of interest in this. We've had 2 opt-in periods so far during 2024, and we do have a third one scheduled for June. So we'll start kind of pushing out information about that to our coordinators soon. What happens after the opt-in period closes is that PCG sends a list to us of all of the people who've opted in. We review that and make sure it's the correct contacts for the district and the schools. We approve that list, and then PCG sets up virtual training sessions for everybody who's expressed an interest to opt in during that period. We also have several districts who have participated in some one-on-one informational sessions with PCG prior to opting in. They just had some questions about the platform before they went ahead and committed. So they've been really accommodating with that. And they've also been available to present information during some of the co-op meetings. So kind of our plan for this is, hopefully for districts who've opted in, we hope to be able to use this during monitoring. So if we have a district who has opted to use Title I Next, they end up being selected for monitoring. The KDE staff who are assigned as monitors are going to get temporary access to all of the folders for that district and the school. I should have mentioned this earlier. KDE does not just have ongoing open access to this. We can't go in there and look at anybody's stuff. So this would be temporary access just for the purpose of monitoring. And so then those districts are not going to have to upload all of that documentation for Title I Part A to SharePoint, hoping this will save a lot of time for them. Then once any findings have been addressed, the monitoring is fully closed out, then any access that's been given to KDE staff is going to be removed. So we will no longer have access to the district or schools Title I Next platforms. Just some basics about the program. When we sat down and worked with PCG on kind of the structure and what we wanted to this to look like, what we did was just take our monitoring checklists to help the districts easily save documentation for demonstrating compliance. We also set up some very general broad due dates. These are just reminders. They are not punitive, just to kind of help keep the districts and the schools on track and prevent you from having to upload everything at the end of the year, for example. I already mentioned KDE does not have access to the platform. The district level users, they can see the materials for the schools, but each school level user, they can only see the material for their school. And then each location, in addition to the requirement folders, they also have something called a file cabinet that is visible only to them, and they can just store any additional materials there that maybe kind of relate to the program, but aren't specific things that they want to upload to demonstrate compliance. So our discussion questions, has anybody on the call, are you aware of your district opting in to use Title I Next? And if so, just kind of if you could give us any general first impressions of the system, that would be great.
I do have a question. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly or not, but if we were to go back through the consolidated monitoring audit, then, and we used this layer, we would not have to submit things into the SharePoint, correct?
Not for Title I. This right now is being paid for with Title I Part A, so it's just for us. So for the other programs, yes, but
Okay.
not for Title I Part A.
Okay.
And then just, does anybody have any general recommendations for KDE moving forward with how we're implementing this system? All right, and as I mentioned with the paraeducator section, if you think of anything after this meeting, feel free to just send that over to me. And thank you all.
Thank you so much, Erin. All right, our last presentation for today will be a update on the Title I Part C Service Delivery Plan with Kristen Montgomery. Kristen?
Hey, good morning, and thank you for being with us today. I'm Kristen Montgomery. I am a consultant for Title I programs here at KDE. Today specifically, I'm talking about Title I Part C, which is the education of migratory children. You see three terms on your screen, migrant versus migratory versus immigrant, but what's really the difference between those? So if you watch the news, you might have heard people crossing borders referred to as migrant. These people are migrant as well as immigrants since they are coming from a different country. Our migratory education program actually serves students that move, but not necessarily those from other countries. One of the main qualifying factors is the type of work in which a worker engages. We are focused on helping families and students that work in agriculture or the fishing industry. Some of our families are actually born and raised here in the United States. Some are from different countries seeking refugee status, and others are immigrants coming to the U.S. in search of a better life. So we want to focus on all of their educational benefits. The Title I Part A program was actually enacted in 1965. It was noticed that the migrant students were falling through the cracks educationally. So in 1966, the public law was amended to authorize the Migrant Education Program, or MEP, as a state administered program, and that's what we have today. There are several main goals that our migratory education program focuses on. Our program strives to provide appropriate educational support for migrant students. We ensure that our students receive free and reduced lunches and participate equally in other district or state-funded programs. We like to ensure that the students are receiving services to reduce the educational disruption they may have if they move like during the middle of the school year. We also help them with challenges and barriers they may face coming from different cultures. We focus on understanding the unique needs of the migratory students in order to help them succeed. And finally, we assist the student and family with the state standards and curriculum to help them graduate. The migrant program may offer tutoring. We might provide parent meetings to explain graduation requirements and ask for input from the parents on how well we are doing in the migrant education program. Ultimately, we want our students to graduate high school. That's a big goal of ours, and to succeed in life, whatever that may mean for them. It could mean going to college after high school, or it could be going straight into a career of their choice. We'll be talking to our parents on May 18th at our annual State Parent Advisory Council meeting, which is also called PAC. And we just want to make sure that we receive input from all of our stakeholders, and parents are really near the top of the list for that. So on your screen, you see what is our continuous improvement cycle for our program. We start at the top, and you'll see that we have the state performance targets that are adopted for all of our students, and it's across the focus areas of reading, mathematics, graduation, school readiness, and OSY, which means out of school youth. We have students who have never graduated from an American school. They have to be under the age of 22, and we can provide services to them. So that's what an OSY is. From there, with the state performance targets, we go to the comprehensive needs assessment. We refer to that as the CNA. And what that does is it identifies the needs of our migrant children and families across those areas of focus from the targets. From there, after we develop our needs assessment, we develop our measurable program outcomes, which are called MPOs. These are what help us to assess whether and to what extent we're meeting the needs that we identify in our CNA. From there, we figure out how we want to deliver the strategies in order to meet our performance targets and the MPOs across our focus areas. After we identify and provide the services, we then go to the evaluation stage, which is where we are now. We're in the evaluation stage where we determine whether and to what extent we're being successful in achieving our goals and how our students are achieving their own goals that they may set. So we want to make sure that we are following curriculum and making sure that we service all the students to the best of our capacity with what we have. All right, so as of today, we've begun breaking down our data into easy to understand charts. Our last evaluation was in June 2023, and we found that we had met some of the measured performance outcomes, but there were some that we didn't meet. So right now we're analyzing the data, and we're focusing our efforts on providing resources to help students as well as to meet our goals. Beginning in fall of 2024, which is coming up very soon, we're going to meet with experts for our comprehensive needs assessment. We have a whole committee that will come together. We meet with the families and staff and get feedback to see if there are things they would like to see change from the last time we developed a service delivery plan. So we value that feedback, and we also value feedback of other stakeholders like yourselves. So today we're also seeking input from you on what you may know and what you would like to see change within our program. We've identified 2 specific focus areas we would like to address on the next service delivery plan. We have selected preschool and priority for service, which we refer to as PFS. So let's discuss what a PFS actually is. So when the federal government gives each state funds for the migratory education program, they want us to provide services first to this priority group of students. Priority for service, or PFS, according to the Every Student Succeeds Act, Section 1304D, in providing services with funds received under this part, each recipient of such funds shall give priority to migratory children who have made a qualifying move within the previous 1-year period and who are failing or most at risk of failing to meet the challenging state standards or make school. So we would use that criteria to identify our priority for service students. The above criteria that you see is what we look at to determine that a student is a priority for service. So the advocate that we would have in each district goes and completes what we call a needs assessment in our web app, which is called MIS 2000. From there, the data is entered either by the advocate or through our weekly data import from Infinite Campus. A star will appear next to the student in Infinite Campus so that the district knows they are PFS. There are also reports that can be run so the district can identify these students. In Kentucky, according to our current service delivery plan, we require that a student that is PFS receive 2 or more supplemental services per week. So these services may be ESL or EL as it's called now, RTI, response to intervention, special education, or services directly through the migrant program. If the student maintains a C average or higher, migrant may not have to provide direct tutoring services, but if the expectation is that a student's grade drops to a D or an F, migrant staff should intervene and should be providing direct tutoring services either after school or when the child is available to assist. So here's an interesting statement in our evaluation from last year. 70% of migrant PFS students are receiving at least 2 supplemental services per week. It was observed that the number of PFS students receiving supplemental services increased by a sizable amount in the year following COVID. We will see if we have made gains with the 22-23 school year, and when the Kentucky Summative Assessment or KSA data is released this fall in 2024, we should be able to compare the 22-23 and 23-24 data, and we want to determine whether having the 2 supplemental services per week has made the impact that we would hope on student assessment scores. We want to be able to set high goals for students that are ambitious, but at the same time, we want them to be realistic. So you can see on your screen here are some different statistics that we have. 70% of PFS students are receiving those supplemental services per week statewide. If you compare that to 2018-2019, only 43% were receiving that service. There are some different factors that contribute to that, but we are working on that currently. You can go ahead. So I want to elicit a discussion and get some of your input. We would like to know, what types of supplementary services have you found to be the most impactful for student achievement in your district or your school? Like, what have you seen that works well for your students? These can be any supplementary services. It does not have to be related to migrant education. Okay, or what suggestions might you have regarding increasing student achievement?
The most positive feedback we've gotten is before school and after school services, both tutoring and enrichment activities. Okay.
Is your tutoring through Migrant Ed, or are there other supplementary services that provide that, or is it its own program?
Both. We do provide 3 days a week after school, and the EL program, the EL program provides before school tutoring for some of the same students.
Okay. Good. We like to hear that. That's a great supplementary service, and I'm glad that you're seeing the effects of that are positive.
Very positive feedback from classroom teachers.
Oh, good, good. Do parents ever give any feedback on that?
Yes, very much.
Good. We are glad to hear that. What can we do as a migratory education program to set ambitious goals for student achievement, but are also feasible? Giving like our available staffing, our funding, we want to do what we can with what we have. So we're just looking for suggestions on how we could set feasible but attainable and ambitious goals.
I think something I've seen in the past, I feel like we had a school, it's been a while, but they would do like, they would offer a meal, and they would, with the family and the kids, and they would also kind of teach the parents how to help with the homework. Like that's kind of not necessarily a migrant issue. It's probably, it could be even harder, but just sometimes they, especially, you know, when you look at like the way math is taught, like parents struggle because they'll teach them one way or they'll have a way that they know how to do it, and then the kids are like, where's your model, where's this, and then the parents struggle because they don't know what that means. So that was kind of an opportunity to help parents to be able to help their kids.
Great. And so you're able to see a direct impact, hopefully, on the students being able to achieve in those areas because the parents can help them. Good. Okay. Any other thoughts on any of the questions on this page? Okay. If not, we can move on. So one of the areas that we identified that we wanted to help with this year on our service delivery plan was preschool. If you look at the chart on your screen, you're going to see the 2022 K-Screen results. These are shown for the migrant identified kindergarten students by the preschool services they received. There were 20 students enrolled in preschool that were receiving 10 or more in-home service contacts. Of this group, 50% were not ready for kindergarten and 50% were. So we were about half and half on that. If you look at the group that were not enrolled in preschool and not were receiving the 10 in-home service contacts, out of 177, 54% were not ready. And then if you look at all of the migrant kindergarten students together, you would see that 53% were not ready. So whenever we have our evaluation in June 2023, when we had that, we noticed that our MPO stated that by spring 2022, the percentage of migrant preschool age children either enrolled in preschool or receiving 10 or more in-home service contacts who demonstrate kindergarten readiness on K-Screen or the Brilliance will increase to 60%. So we wanted to take it up about 10 percentage points at the least. So this data shows why it's important for us to focus on preschool services and to develop that curriculum further. So thinking about preschool, in your experience, what additional services are needed for migrant students enrolled in preschool? Okay, if you have any suggestions for improvement of the migrant preschool readiness services, what would you want to improve for your district or for the program overall? What do we think would help those students? Okay. Do you have any feedback or suggestions on our focus areas of PFS or preschool that we've selected for the needs assessment? If anybody's had a preschool student, or if you have had a child who was in preschool, maybe you might know some of the different things that they might need to succeed. For migrant, it adds another layer of needs. So we just want to make sure that we're addressing that to help them be successful. Okay.
Oh, I had one thing back on that. I know something that is we've had different people that work in preschool tell us is a need, is working with kids who have trauma in their background. And we do a lot of work, but it's kind of like kindergarten on. So that's something that we're working on. We do like a mental health summit in the summer, trying to bring educators in that can help us do professional developments in that area. And it's been kind of hard to even find people that work, with the littles when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that might continue to be a need moving forward.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the feedback for sure on that one. Okay. Anything else on this page? Any feedback or input you can give us? If not, we can go ahead and go to the end. So I wanted to thank you for your input and suggestions. It is very helpful for us to have different stakeholders provide direction for us to improve our program, develop our goals, make sure that our students are being successful, and that we're assisting with that in every way that we can. So if you happen to think of anything else that maybe you forgot to ask today, or if you think of a concern, a question, any suggestions you might have, there is our contact information on the screen. I'm Kristen Montgomery. That's my email. And then Christina Benassi is the person who directs our program. That's her email. And she's also very knowledgeable. She's been here way longer than me, can probably give you a lot more input on specific things. So if you have anything that you would like to address, feel free to email us there at that contact information.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. Appreciate the information. All right. We have a little bit of time left, and so I would like to take just a few minutes to speak with the committee members about any future agenda topics that you would like to request. Is there anything else? Because some of these will continue. I'm sure we will continue to have updates on some of these topics, but are there any other topics that you would like to perhaps have as an agenda item? And if you think of anything, please feel free to just send me an email and with any suggestions that you can think of that may occur to you at a later time. That would be totally fine. So the last thing that I'd like to talk about is upcoming meetings. I felt like this year that having the 3 meetings worked pretty well. It seemed like it was about right, but if you disagree with that and you would like more or fewer, please let me know, or you could share that out right now if you have any thoughts about that. But what I was kind of thinking is next year, maybe a meeting in late September, possibly January, and then again in April. But I know some people had some conflicts at some of those times. So if you know right now that there's a time that's going to be good or bad for you during that time period, that's fine. But if you need to go back and check your calendar and see, we can work through those things through emails. But if you have anything at this time, any thoughts about upcoming meetings for next year, if you'd like to share those now, that's totally fine as well. Okay, then I will follow up with you all with some information about upcoming meetings and see if anybody has thought of any additional topics that they would like to propose for future meetings. But I just want to say, since this is our last meeting of the 2023-24 school year, how much I appreciate your participation and your thoughtful questions and comments and providing feedback on this very important requirement from the Every Student Succeeds Act, that we have this committee and that we engage our practitioners in the improvement of this program. So thank you so much. And I'm speaking for all of us in our division and in our office at KDE, really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much. And with that, we will adjourn today. Thank you all again for being here.